Welcome to Part 2B of our ELA Spring Webinar Series for Grades 6 through English 2. This is the final recording in a series of 4. These recordings are based on the spring webinars we hosted in March 2025. To reduce the length of the recordings, we have broken each of those 2 sessions into 2 sections. In Part 2A, we looked at a TDW argumentative task and the argumentative writing process. Today, we will focus on informative writing instruction and the informative TDW item. Take a moment to think about what type of writing you do most in your everyday life. Do you write a lot of 5-paragraph essays or lengthy research papers? While you may occasionally write such pieces, you most likely write shorter pieces such as emails, directions, or reports. Our students must have ample opportunities to write a wide range of informational pieces that vary in purpose, style, and audience. In our everyday lives, how often do we write for an informational test item? My guess is that it's rare. If we teach the informational writing process and allow students to write regularly, then we are preparing them for a test item. If our students only write when it involves a test item, are we communicating to students that writing is only important for a test item? The informative TDW task is not a TDA. The TDW item, Writing to Inform, is not a TDA item. The TDA item asked students to read a text or texts and analyze the craft of that author. Students were directed to focus on elements such as how does character development impact plot development? And how does the structure of the text impact the meaning? The text-dependent writing item aligns to the Communication 2.1 indicators, which asks students to examine and analyze sources of information before writing in depth about the topic. Students are not being asked to analyze aspects of an author's craft. The TDW item is about analyzing information and using it to convey ideas. This is just a reminder that informational writing is also a process, and the purpose and audience must be considered. For the TDW item, we will provide the information needed to write the response. This may look different in the classroom. Teachers may wish to provide sources of information including different types of media, or teachers may allow students to research a topic and incorporate the research indicators into the process. Remember, not all research has to be a long, drawn-out assignment. In our everyday lives, we constantly use short bursts of research to provide information for a variety of smaller writing pieces, such as emails and presentations. The sample item currently available for the TDW task, Writing to Inform, is an 8th grade item. 7th grade and English 2 should also use this sample for guidance. Remember, the type of TDW item on the Spring 2025 assessments may be either argumentative or informative. Students should receive writing instruction for both. Additionally, narrative writing will be assessed through selected response items on the writing session of the test. Unlike the TDA item, there is not a formula to the TDW task. The TDA item had a set format. The TDW item does not. Each informational task was crafted based on the text, and what students are being asked to consider about the text. As you read this task, ask yourselves, can a student write a response to this task without reading the text? The answer should be no. Some students will need support in close reading and annotating a text as they read. This is not a test prep skill. This is a reading skill that should be regularly practiced throughout the school year. Some students will need additional guiding questions as they read the text. This will direct their thinking and allow the teacher to formatively assess students' comprehension and analysis of texts. This task asks students to explain how this person used curiosity and appreciation for the beauty of nature to become successful in her work. Without a close reading of the text, students would not be able to adequately respond to this task. The term elaboration appears in Communication 2.1 in 7th grade. This asks students to expand their thoughts on the evidence as part of developing the written response. This allows students to draw conclusions, make connections, and include prior knowledge if able. Including prior knowledge is not required because not all students will have previous knowledge of each topic. Students are also encouraged to connect information in the text to other relevant concepts and ideas. It may be tempting to use a formula such as race or say mean matter. If you take time to look through the released TDW sample responses, you will notice that most of the formulaic responses scored low. We will look at one specific example shortly. Evidence can come in many forms. As a part of writing instruction, teach students to use the evidence to develop their response. The evidence they include should have a purpose that goes beyond meeting a quota. It should develop and enhance their response. Students should be taught to select a variety of evidence that is relevant to what they are writing, and that comes from Communications Indicator 2.1b. For a student to be successful with writing to inform, he must include a controlling idea. This idea is generally stated in the first paragraph and tells the reader what to expect to learn. It also provides the writer with support organizing his work. The TDW task provides students with the general basis of their controlling idea. In this case, we expect the writer to inform us about how this person used her curiosity and appreciation for the beauty of nature to become successful in her work. We expect to learn what her work is, how she is successful in it, and how her curiosity impacted her success. In this student's introduction, you see the controlling idea at the end of the paragraph. Just like a claim and argument writing, the controlling idea guides the rest of the response. This student begins the response by providing a summary of Power's accomplishments. By doing this, the student provides the reader with an overview and understanding of the source material. Specific to the TDW item, this lets the reader know that the student read and understood the source material. It also leads into the controlling idea. This is not in the rubric, and it is not a required feature of the TDW item. This is just one way a student may begin the informational response. There are other ways. This is just one example. I caution you to not force your students into including a summary. If a student cannot do it well, it may hurt his or her score. This introduction is from a different student's response. This student also received a score of 4 of 4 on the SC Ready TDW item. The controlling idea is in blue font inside the red box. This student did not use a summary to introduce the response. Each student achieved a top score on the response, and each student took a different approach to introduce the topic. Returning to the original student's paper, let's look at a body paragraph. In this body paragraph, the focus is on Power's appreciation for nature. This student provides some paraphrasing of text combined with original thinking as shown in blue. We also see relevant text evidence that supports the controlling idea and is relevant to the student's thinking in green. Lastly, we see in pink the elaboration of ideas. This sample is from a different student's response. This response received a TDW score of 3 out of 4 on the SC Ready test, indicating that it meets the expectations of the 8th grade informational writing indicator. In blue, we notice some of the transitional strategies the student uses to connect her ideas as she conveys information. These words and phrases help organize the student's thought and progress the controlling idea. This meets the expectations of C 2.1C. In orange, we notice the student uses a scientific vocabulary that supports the controlling idea and the topic. The student's focus on the controlling idea has also helped her organize her response, and in turn makes the response easier for the reader to understand. The reader is not left to make assumptions and connections on his own. This meets the expectations of C 2.1D. Let's look at a weak example from a different student's response. This student begins by stating Power was an extremely influential scientist in marine biology, and then the student provides a short summary of her background. The controlling idea is in blue and is placed at the end of the introductory paragraph. Notice the student makes a small change in the controlling idea as it is presented in the task. The student switches it from Power using her curiosity and appreciation to become successful in her work to Power making important contributions to the study of aquatic organisms. This slightly shifts the focus from how Power became successful to what her contributions were. Although the student does mention in the first sentence that Power was influential, this slight change in the controlling idea may impact the focus of the student's response. In the second paragraph, we notice the use of quotes and paraphrasing in green. In orange, we see a continuation of the idea that Power used her curiosity to make contributions. There is no mention of how her contributions made her successful in her career. It is implied to the reader, but it is not stated. Remember, the controlling idea provided to the student is about how Power used her curiosity and appreciation to become successful in her work. The student's controlling idea focuses on how Power used her curiosity and appreciation to make important and impactful contributions to her field. At the beginning of the second body paragraph, the student continues the discussion of the aquarium. In blue, the student also states that Power became insanely popular, but does not explain how that equates to success, which leaves the reader to assume the two are connected. Toward the end of the paragraph in green, the student mentions specific information from the text supporting that Power became well known when she published a book. The student also later includes that Power's curiosity led her to be famous. While the student attempts to elaborate on these ideas, the student does not make the much needed connections for the reader. For example, in the fourth line, the student mentions the published books that made Power well known. In the next sentence, the student goes back to show how Power used creativity to create the aquarium. And then in the next sentence, the student returns to Power's fame in the scientific world and uses a direct quote to support it in green. Again, the reader is left to make the connections in the conclusion. The writer states that Power used creativity and curiosity to open possibilities for her to become successful. Later, the writer mentions a level of notability. These two concepts are not directly connected for the reader. Weak transitional strategies. While the writer does use some transitional words and phrases, the question is, does the writer use them to effectively connect ideas and clarify relationships? Let's look at the relationship in this sentence inside the red box. Using the word because indicates a cause and effect relationship. Because of this, that happened. Because of Power's fascination, she wanted a better look at the organisms. The second part is, because of Power's fascination, her curiosity was sparked. Or because Power wanted a better look, her curiosity was sparked. Are these ideas connected clearly and effectively? Does fascination cause curiosity, or are they essentially the same? Does wanted a better look cause curiosity, or does curiosity cause her to want a better look? Let's move to the next sentence in the red box. This sentence begins with however, which indicates a contrast of ideas. The previous sentence finished with Power's curiosity being sparked, so the reader expects a contrast because of the word however. Does the inability to see many creatures well enough contrast with Power's curiosity being sparked? As a reader, we can assume that what the writer is trying to say is that Power's curiosity led her to find a way to better view these organisms, but her task was made difficult because many of them were not easy to observe in the ocean because of where they lived and the size of the ocean. But is that what the writer actually says? How many times did you have to read these two sentences to determine what the writer might mean? Is it our job as readers to make these connections, or is it the job of the writer? The TDW task provides students with a controlling idea. For most of the informational writing students do in everyday life and in the classroom, the controlling idea is not provided. Just as with the claim in argument writing, we must first teach students how to write a clear controlling idea that will help them organize their ideas as they write and will help the reader follow the student's ideas. For the purpose of the TDW item, we are using the term controlling idea. We, along with other teachers and ELA content experts in South Carolina, want to discourage the assumption that a thesis statement must include 3 ideas, which will always lead to a 5-paragraph essay. There is a time and a place for the 5-paragraph essay, but not everything should be a 5-paragraph essay. As we mentioned earlier in this presentation, when is the last time you wrote a 5-paragraph essay? To be successful writers of information, students must learn how to write a strong, controlling idea. This is part of the writing process and is unrelated to the TDW item. Students need practice examining strong and weak controlling ideas and the opportunity to discuss the strengths and weaknesses. They need practice rewriting weak controlling ideas to make them stronger. They then need to do the same process with their own controlling ideas. The strategies for claim presented in recording 2A can be adapted for controlling idea. Once students are able to write a strong controlling idea, they need instruction on how to expand that into a written response. Outlining is one way to support this. Provide students with a written response and ask them to determine the controlling idea and to then write an outline for the paper. They should have the opportunity to discuss and compare their outlines. Help students make connections between the final response and its outline before asking them to write their own outline from scratch. A list of transitional words and phrases will help students, but it will not teach them how to effectively use transitions. Students must understand that writers use transitions to connect ideas, show relationships, create structure, and help the audience read and understand the written work. Many students need support and practice using transitional strategies strategically and effectively. Use sentences from mentor texts. Ask students to explain how the transitions work in the sentences or paragraph. Provide the students with poorly written sentences and paragraphs. Ask them to evaluate the transitions and make corrections. Allow them time to talk and explain their choices. There is a document that provides a color-coded breakdown of English 2 TDW student responses. This document has an explanatory video that walks through the papers and students' strengths and weaknesses in argumentative writing for the TDW item. We recommend that 7th and 8th grade teachers also use these resources. Everything we just explored in our students' writing is rooted in the informational writing indicators. It is not only tied to a test item. This is how TDW is different from TDA. The TDW items are specifically designed to fit within our writing instruction, so teachers do not have to focus on a test item. Teach the writing indicators for your grade level. Teach all 3 modes of writing at every grade level. Teach writing as a process, not as a test item. If students are writing, receiving feedback, and revising, they will be prepared for the TDW item. Provide students with a variety of written products. What will students write in everyday life? Allow for a variety of formal and informal writing. Feedback and revision cannot be stressed enough. Use writing formatively to identify who needs additional instruction and support. Combine reading, research, and writing when possible. This is the 4th recording in a series of 4 for ELA teachers in grades 6 through English 2. Thank you for watching this recording.